Hello there, Sir from 17 once again. This is Goldeneye. 00 agent, no damage. We're starting with the legendary dam. I'm playing this on the 1964 emulator, and it has this wonderful little mouse injector that enables me to use mouse and keyboard. So this might not look like the Goldeneye you remember, even though if you're anything like me, it's been over 20, maybe 25 years since I last played this game. And what a special game it is. And what an honor and a blessing it is to be able to share this. I never really thought that this type of stuff would be on my channel. It just never occurred to me that this is, where we would be at this moment, but I couldn't be happier. Because Goldeneye was my first real first-person shooter, and it's a game that is indeed so special and true to my heart. And we're going to be storming through it pretty quickly here, and you'll have to apologise for some of the play. I had not played in a while, and I've got a decent amount of knowledge in Goldeneye, but it's like anything else, isn't it? You have to de-rust and get yourself back on the bike. But I'm moving through the zone, using all the tools, killing a bunch of people, and movement is amazing in this game. It's really powerful. And the first thing that you need to know if you've never played before is moving diagonally on a lot of N64 games enables your character to move faster. And a lot of the game struggles with your ability to move so quickly. Another thing is you'll see me cycle through my weapons a lot. Changing weapons in this game, you either cycle through them or you go to your watch. I tend to cycle, and it is a little bit frustrating when you've got a lot of things. But it's just par for the course, you do get used to it. And then the best thing about Goldeneye, in my opinion, is that when you combine the movement with the enemies, you're practically invincible. Outside of a handful of moments and 2 stages later on, Cradle and Aztec. But in this area, we have the initiative because we are more capable than our opponents. And it's all because of movement. Movement enables you to get away and get around all kinds of bad situations, and in Goldeneye, the AI is so fair that they generally telegraph everything they're going to do, and their telegraphs can be different. So you get the rolls, you get the peaks and the leans and the fires, you get the kneeling down to fire, you get the running firing, you get a few different ones as we plant the covert modem here. And the idea is, they do this to tell you that the gunshot is about to come. And when the gunshot does start firing, you need to either be at a distance and moving so that they can't hit you, or you need to get behind the gun, to the side. Either way, it doesn't really matter. As long as you can rotate away from where they're shooting, you'll be okay. And then the final option that is present for the player is the flinch system. So although this is an N64 game and it's a shooter on console back in the time where shooters weren't as standardized as they are now, you can mitigate most damage by making your opponent uncomfortable. And there are only certain moments where this doesn't work. When you shoot an enemy, they will always respond to what you've done, and they will react in different ways because their animation system is really advanced for the time, and it got even more advanced in Perfect Dark. But the idea is, if you're first, you will win, because when you shoot them, they flinch, and then you can kill them while they're flinching. An enemy that is flinching cannot shoot. It's the most powerful feature you can have. So the whole game becomes about moving out of the way of danger, moving quickly, and striking quickly too. Land that first shot, and then kill. And as we move down into the sewers, this is the first part of the dam that might cause you difficulty. And if you're anything like I was, you might not recognise this area too much, because when I was a kid, I played Goldeneye on Agent. I did not do Secret Agent. I did not do 00 Agent. This is the first time, what you're watching here, I have ever cleared this level on, well, maybe not first time, but the first day of actually clearing 00 Agent, because when I was younger, it was just too hard and it scared me. And it's really funny, because I talk about this quite a lot. When I go back to games from my childhood, there's this nested fear. It's like a nested intimidation factor of this game beat me, and it bullied me, and I don't know if I'm good enough to play it, It's this strange thing, it's a wonderful phenomenon, and it happens a lot. Especially the further back you go, the younger I was, the more embedded this bullying was. So if you've ever played Dam on Agent, all you do is get to the end of the dam and jump. That's the only missions that you have to do. On 00 Agent, vastly different. They add multiple mission parameters, and if you do them incorrectly, you fail the mission. And the thing with Goldeneye is, These levels can be really harsh like that. If you do something wrong and you fail an objective, you are lost, you've failed, you have to start again. And this is a single segment of each stage. So whenever I get hit, or whenever I fail a mission objective, I quit via the watch and I restart the stage. And it's really funny too, because this emulator lets you save state, but for me, coming back to prove a point to Goldeneye involves beating it on its own terms. If I were to do something fancy or crazy with this game, I might use the save states and segment it a little bit and have a bit more fun, but it just felt right. And every one of these videos, I'm happy to report, was successful. I was able to get them all as intended, and I think it works better that way. I am nowhere near the Goldeneye player needed to do them all single segment. That would just be insane. And definitely not my speed. But you're going to notice I check my objectives before I finish quite a lot, because you can finish levels and then lose, which is not something you want to do. So I get a little bit paranoid, but we check the objective on the watch, and then we do the legendary bungee from the dam. And thus begins the start of my Goldeneye project. And I've got so many stories when it comes to this game, it really is fascinating. Everybody has that game, don't they, that was the huge one for them. People talk about things like Doom, they talk about Wolfenstein, you know, maybe they'll talk about Halo or Medal of Honor or, you know, something a bit more eclectic. I did play Doom before this, I played it on the SNES, and it was cool, but it's going to sound strange this when I explain it as we move into Facility, an absolutely legendary mission. Doom didn't feel 3D to me, and I don't know if that makes sense, but obviously it's like 2D, 3D. But it seemed really strange, and it was cool and I enjoyed it, but it still kind of felt of that era, that generation. When I played Goldeneye for the first time, this was the future of video games in my mind. It was just, this is it, we'll never be able to go back. And speaking of never being able to go back, I've completely forgot here to pick up the security card that you get off one of the soldiers in the back room. And this was only my second time playing Facility since I got back. I did a test run and I got the no damage quite easily. And then I did this run, and on the recording I forgot to go and kill him and grab that. But you might be wondering, what's happening with this emulator then? And I'd never heard of it, the 1964 emulator, until a couple of months ago. And I start looking every so often at emulators to see how they're improving and to see what's going on, because the idea of playing old games from my childhood and my formative years on mouse and keyboard is a dream to me. Higher frames, higher features, mouse and keyboard. This bit here is very, very difficult, but it's a wonderful showcase of how naturally inaccurate the guards are. You might look at that and be like, wow, this looks weird, how the hell could you ever get hit? Well, sometimes it feels like that, it really does. Sometimes you feel like you're invincible and there's nothing the enemies can do, but there's a handful of moments later on, Silo, the train, Aztec, Cradle, Caverns, where you will definitely not feel as invincible as you might have done just then. But again, movement, accuracy, stunning, it all helps, it all goes a long way, and if you don't want to play this aggressively, if you want to slow down a little bit, you can bait people to doors, bait people on corners, hold angles, all that kind of stuff, but I find that shit really boring, and I did not come back to fucking Goldeneye 20 years later to play it like a bitch. So I'm going to be as aggressive as I physically can be, and I'm going to engage with as many soldiers as I can, and that's exactly what you're seeing here. But the emulator's wonderful. It's very simple to set up, the mouse injector works a dream. I'm really surprised at how good the mouse feels, but be warned, if you are a PC player, it's not going to feel proper, it's going to feel a little bit off, but it still feels really, really solid so that you can have fun with it. And in that emulator you can make the game run at 60 FPS, that's what it's running at right now. The only area where you'll have some problems is areas of collision. Like the archive window can control you a little bit, the glass doors control you a little bit, but it's never anything too harsh that should get in the way of your enjoyment. And then I am playing the game on a slightly higher FOV. Not too crazy, of course, but enough to be a little bit better and a little bit more fun for a player such as myself. And you might be wondering, Chris, how can you aim? There's no reticle, there's nothing to help you. And if you press the right mouse, you can go into the aimed mode, because Goldeneye always had a manual aiming mode if you never played before, but it's a bit fiddly and you can't really move outside of sidestepping. So what I did is I have some software on my PC that puts a crosshair on the center of my screen, and the bullets in this game come from the center of the screen. So it looks like on the video that I'm just aiming normally without the need of an aid, but I'm using one. You just cannot see it. And then we move into the room that we have to chuck the mines on with Trevelyan. Good old Sean Bean doing what he does best. And apparently on this, as soon as the mission objective is done and Alec moves away, you can detonate this and leave. I didn't realise that, you see. I have a very set way of doing facility since I was a kid. So I wait for it all to kick off and people start shooting at me, and you do not need to do this, guys. This was just me showing my inexperience with the game. Or at least my lack of expertise when it comes to doing the missions. And it's funny too because when I was younger, I preferred Perfect Dark over Goldeneye, because to me Perfect Dark is probably the greatest shooter ever made. It is one of those games that is just absolutely insane. And I played it to death, because there was so much in that game. There's so many features, so much fun to be had. Me and my friends, it was our religion, it's all we did. And then I get a bit trolled here. But I get very lucky, nobody tags me, and there you go, facilities down. So for me, Perfect Dark is this massive emblem of just amazing game design at a time when it was just so important and so precious. And I went back to it on the Xbox Live version that they added, and I played it, and I had a good time with it, but I just kinda didn't care as much, you know? I don't know what it was. I kind of felt like, I don't know, maybe it's not as good as I remember, even though it absolutely is. So it was one of those things where I'd always thought that Perfect Dark was my favourite, and then when I went back to it when I was a bit older, I didn't enjoy it as much. When I came back to this game, it was such an experience of nostalgia and just sheer joy. Be very careful here, these two guys, they like to blow that monitor up on the table, and everything in this game that you can shoot pretty much blows up, and the fire will hurt you. This is one of my least favourite levels in the game because I hate the tank. The tank is really strange. It's got a parabolic arc on its shots, and you are not armoured when you get in it, so you can get shot. And you have to use this tank, it seems like, on this mission, or I would have avoided it entirely. But the trick here is to be as aggressive as you can, because if you can stay moving forward and do the objective, the enemies that spawn behind you won't have time to come near you and everything will be fine. But I took a few hits on this one. I did not like this mission at all. But on the tangent that I was saying, I've come now to realise that Perfect Dark is the better game. It's got more features. It's definitely the more insane game when it comes to, you know, changing the perspective of a young mind. But I do think, campaign-wise, I prefer Goldeneye. And it's just because Perfect Dark overcomplicated a lot of things. It made them more complex, which is amazing for somebody that's wanting to engage with it. But I think there's something really primal and just raw about this game. Some of the missions can be a little bit tricky on what you're supposed to do, and they can be easy to fail. But fundamentally, you get in there, you do a few espionage things, and you get out, and I really appreciate that. Whereas in Perfect Dark, it feels a lot stricter, because the game is much more difficult. Lots of fail states, lots of opportunity to do things wrong. And, of course, it's still amazing. I'm not going to throw too much shade at it, because it's an all-time classic. But coming back to this right now, I think I prefer Goldeneye. And it's funny I say that, because I played a lot of the campaign of this on Agent, like a trooper when I was younger, but I played way more of the multiplayer. And I think a lot of us were that way, because the multiplayer was one of those things where getting a few friends around and just going ham. Absolutely unbelievable. However, we're in Cervenia, or whatever it's called, this Russian snowfield. And this is Surface 1. We're going to be coming back here later on, and it's mildly different, but the reason that this is a bit of a departure, thus far, we haven't had any moments outside of the reinforcements called, where the enemies are infinite. And I think on this level, they might be, because there are these enemies that will constantly be running towards where you are. And luckily for us, they don't have the best awareness, and they don't have the best accuracy. If this was the kind of cranking that Cradle gets, where that first guy who snipes you before you can even see his model, if this area had that AI, this would be one of the most miserable levels in the game. But instead, look, here's one here, see him? This guy. We have so much advantage because the enemies want to run really close, and then they want to start going into their firing animation, but if you can hit them before, they can't do it. And the mission here involves us breaking some surveillance cameras, picking up a safe, from that key, and then going in and I think sabotaging the radar dome. This was the first mission when I came back and I started trying to route this, where I got into a little bit of difficulty because I just couldn't figure out what they wanted you to do. And it's interesting, isn't it? Now, there's a nice cheeky shot here coming up, I think, on one of the cameras, because you can shoot it on the side. But you come in here, and this is the safe that we got the key for. This is the blueprints for the bunker. And then if you keep moving, we're going to be going to that radio tower. And a lot of the levels, I'm pretty proud of the recordings, because I went in, I practiced them and beat them a few times, no damage, and I came and recorded them and they went really smooth. However, some of the levels later on, because I got them quite quickly, they're a little bit less practiced, shall we say. Particularly Depot. Depot has infinitely spawning guards and it's not a very fun stage and it all looks the bloody same, so that one's a bit messy, but other than that, the stages should go down pretty quickly if somebody shoots at me there. And then you come over to the ladder here, you shoot the 4 padlocks, and then we can move into bunker. And there's a few levels in this game that are really famous in my brain. Just for the ones that you really remember because you replayed them a ton. And Surface is not really one of those, even though it's very impressive graphically the first time you see it. But bunker coming up is really cool. But this is a tricky mission, this one. It's not too hard, especially not compared to Bunker 2. But it's enough to get you wondering what's going on. And there's quite a lot of objectives here, and the AI can screw you. So you start with a silenced pistol with these 2 guys, and the trick here is to try to maintain a low profile if you can. In this game, every gun has a certain audio range that it can be heard from, and depending on what you're using depends on how much chaos you can cause and how many people will be alert to it. And some of the guns that seem to draw the most hazards are not the guns you'd expect. And sometimes if you can get away with it, even using the slap is a really, really good option. But the cameras are very satisfying to kill on this game, but do not go too close to them because that explosion is hazardous. And if you can shoot the lens, they will die in 1 bullet, which is the best way to kill any cameras, but you also risk being spotted, so don't dilly-dally. And then this room here is a server room we're going to be coming back to, and here's a strategy that's really strong in Goldeneye. So if there's ever a doorway in your path, you can use it to bait people to come to it and then shoot them as it's opening. And if the doorway has a window, you can shoot through the window and the enemies will never do this. And this fella here with the double clobs is signs of things to come. If you ever see enemies that are carrying dual weapons, and they tend to wear berets as well, they are by far the most dangerous enemies in the game. They tend to be a little bit more durable, they tend to be a little bit more dangerous, a little bit more clued in, and they have fancy firing stances that show you that they've got more training. So be very careful with those enemies. And I mentioned earlier on that there are a few instances where the stun doesn't work. The first instance is if you shoot someone's gun. And this is one of those things that for the time is really, really clever and really, really cool, but when you're playing it can be a bit of a ball ache. If you mag dump their machine gun and you don't hit them, they can do what they want, they won't flinch. Additionally, if you shoot their beret off instead of their head, sometimes that will lead to you not getting a flinch as well. And there was a little bit of an optical illusion there on the screen, you might have seen it. I didn't notice this when I was recording, but I've noticed it a few times on the videos here. Every so often, you get like this weird mirroring in the recording. It's like, you know, windows in windows or mirrors in mirrors. It's a strange thing, and I'm hoping it doesn't ruin any of these runs, because it's not ideal to have something on the capture being a bit goofy. And I don't know if that's OBS, I don't know if that's the emulator, I don't know if that's my PC being weird. It could be a handful of things. But here we go. Doing the Goldeneye key and making sure we can mess around with Boris. The Clob there, which is a scorpion, it might be tempting to use that gun because it has a lot of bullets and it's perceivingly that it fires. You can perceive it to fire quite quickly, but the problem with the Clob is its accuracy is terrible. Even with 2 of them, they are notoriously bad. So I do not recommend using them ever. And remember how I said the guys with the berets and everything were kind of a big deal? Well, that alarm brings a bunch of them to run down this concourse here to us. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut the doors and I'm going to shoot them through this glass. They will never shoot at you if something is in the way. Even though they have direct line of sight, they'll never shoot. So if you just stay here, you can get rid of all of these guys and then leisurely do the rest of the mission. And I thought for 1 second that this might have been infinite, because when I was routing it, it seemed like it was. But it's not. I think it's finite, this one. Bunker 2, however, is infinite, and it's one of the problems that that level has, and one of the things that you're going to have to circumvent. But you can see on the ground we got the Clobs, we've got some of the K7s, is it, the AK that we're using. And something that's cool about this game is each of the weapon types drop into the ammunition type that they use. So all 9mm will use 9mm, and then some of the bigger rounds will use that as well. And it's one of those things where if you pick up a lot of a gun you don't like, you might be able to use a gun you do like that uses the same ammo type. So it's definitely a good habit to get into the process of doing. But we're now going to be downloading the data. You'll notice I've got my eyes on the doorway here. The reason I'm doing this is just in case there's any stragglers running down, because there's a ton of enemies here, it seems like. But they do come in waves, and as soon as we push up here, there's just the 2 guys on the door, and then we've won. And in this case, it was just one fella, so just go out of here, and that's the end of Bunker. It's interesting too, there are certain moments where the spawns are problematic. Any level that has finite spawns tends to be a more fun engagement. And I would be lying if I didn't say I wish all the levels had finite spawns and placed enemies, because it's just more fun to learn and more enjoyable to execute. And this is Silo. This is easily probably the hardest level in the game. This level took me longer than Control, it took me longer than Aztec, it took me longer than insert a level that took you a long time. And I can't even honestly tell you why. It's just really demanding, and if you do it aggressively, it's so easy to do it wrong. So I've had attempts where I didn't pick up one of those chips, and I failed on that. I've had attempts where I missed on a C4 and didn't realise it. Like, I ended up having to do this level like 5 times. And by the end of it, what I decided to do, which is what you're going to see in this, is I decided not to throw any of the plastic explosives, because I was doing it, going into my watch a million times, doing all the objectives, only to get shot at the end. And there's a couple of moments that are really bad on these corners. There's one in particular where if you aren't using the silenced pistol, the guys are going to know you're coming and they're going to pre-fire you. And I got pre-fired on this corner coming up a multitude of times, and it's just a ball ache. To our left here, after we kill him, there's one guy. This time there was 2, but there's one guy who's noticeably mean. That one right there. For some reason, he hit me a few times, and I don't think he should have, but alas. And then you get to this moment where you open these doors and there's tons of dudes. What I like to do is I like to back up and then get back into these recesses and then shoot them. You can shut the doors and then use the opening and closing of the doors to be a bit cheeky, but I tended to have more success just by getting some distance and then strafing out and spraying and then strafing back into cover. And there's going to be a lot of moments here where I just get lucky, and you might watch this and think, well, this looks stupid, this looks easy, nobody can hit you, but trust me guys, you didn't see all the times I reset. This level took like 3 hours, and it shouldn't have, because I did it twice. I just fucked the objectives up, which is the worst reason to fail, and I don't recommend that you fail this mission for any other reason than getting shot. But I do like it as well, and it teaches you a really huge lesson in Goldeneye, which is the more claustrophobic the level, the more difficult the enemies are. Because movement and spacing is the most powerful tools that you have. If you can use those things, you can win. Whereas if you get to an area where you can't dodge, you're just a fish in a barrel and they will kill you. And I think I missed a keycard off a scientist here. There you go. You also need to be careful for that. So there's the keycard. And then I think this next sequence is pretty tough as well. If you pop the K7 on, you will be able to get a lot of noise, a lot of distractions, and the enemies will come to you. And if there's ever a sequence like this, do you see how there's a railing here? Enemies will never shoot over railings or shoot through railings. They can't do it. The way the collision is programmed is they will always try to path to you. So if you ever see a staircase somewhere, use it. It's a really good funnel to kill people. And be careful on this door, this is a really bad one. All these guys know you're here. One of the strategies you can use is you can go through the room crouched, and they have a tough time shooting you. But I don't like crouching in Goldeneye, it feels weird, it looks weird, so I don't do it. It doesn't mean it's not powerful, it's really powerful sometimes, but I'm just going to use straight up first person shooter skills, strafing, peeking, doing all the little tricks I can, and be really careful of this corner here as well coming up. Because there's a lot of dudes here, and that doorway at the back, if they hear the gunfight, they'll come out as well. And one of the main problems with the stun system in this game is that when you're shooting somebody, if you can't hit them because someone's body blocking them, you will not flinch the people behind them. So the amount of times where you'll try to shoot someone, and then the zombie who's dead, who's falling down in front of them, will eat all the bullets, and then the guy behind gets the shot off. And then right here is the tricky part with the Russian guy. So bait the guys on the door, move backwards here, and then you can shoot the Russian guy in the head without even engaging him. Do you see him? It's a bit of an awkward shot, but if you use the zoom, you can see him. And as soon as he runs away, we only have like the last few enemies in this zone, and then we can go back and stick all the plastic explosives. And so far, this has not been too bad of a run, really. The thing that frustrates me most is I had some super sick moments of just really aggressive, just hyper aggressive, storming the keep, killing everybody really quickly, really satisfying. And then you'd do something stupid and get tagged, or you'd get pre-fired coming around a corner. And there aren't many instances in this game where enemies pre-fire you, but this level, it happens a lot, and Caverns, it happens a lot as well. There's a sequence in the caves where there's a bunch of guys set up on boxes as you move past that first zone with Natalia, and for some reason the guys there pre-fire all the time. And I'll tell you guys, if every enemy did that in this game, I would not have done this project, because you just can't do anything about it. It doesn't matter how fast you are, doesn't matter how good you are, they just instantly AI you, and it feels really, really lame. But you might be looking at this and thinking, wow, you might not have enough time to do this. You absolutely do. You can't dilly-dally, of course, but you have enough time to get this done if you do it the way I'm doing it. You're not going to set any speedruns or any world records, but you don't need to. This is no damage, it's a different thing. But use the camera to take a photo of the satellite, then put the plastic on and stick it on this wall. As long as you stick it on that wall, I think you're okay. And then we're just going to backtrack down, and if you move diagonally, you will move faster, so you can do this a little swifter. But at this moment, there's nothing to worry about because you've killed everything. Everyone on this stage is dead, pretty much except for maybe one or two stragglers on the other silos we didn't go into. And you just need to make sure you've got all the cards, all the objectives, and planted all the plastiques. It's an interesting feeling too when you do a mission only to lose on a technicality. And of course, I'm not saying that it's not my fault. It is absolutely my fault. I should have done the technicality, but when I did my practice run for Silo, I cleared it like twice, and I got really lucky on my practice runs. It felt way easier than it actually is. And then when I got to the end of my real run, and it was like the first or second attempt, I got to the elevator and I failed because I didn't pick up something, and I think it was the data. And I didn't realise when I was practicing that I'd picked it up by accident, so I just thought, oh, go in the rooms, plant the stuff, use the camera, go near the scientists, they'll drop the stuff I need, I'll be okay, right? And that was my big folly, guys. That was the big mistake I made. Because I didn't pick up what was essential. And then it cost me another 2 hours or something where I had to come back and do it. And you know how it works. It's the things you don't see behind the editing. The next 20 attempts after that one where I did it, but I messed it up because I didn't pick up that silly thing, every enemy was the best they've ever been. Every enemy wanted to be on the bloody box cover. It was insane. I was getting murked the moment I opened doors. I was getting murked by one enemy on his own. I was getting hit by all kinds of silly stuff. And most of the game is pretty fun, you know? It's just a case of learn the level, learn where the objectives are, you know, hit them first, keep moving, keep quickly, never like run in a straight line because then you'll just get tagged from behind potentially. And for the most, Lady Luck is on your side because the enemies are very fair, they're very balanced. But every so often, there's a silo. Every so often there's a bunker 2. You know, every so often Control turns up and it makes you rethink a lot of things. And it's interesting difficulty-wise because, as I mentioned at the beginning of this run, I was scared of this game coming back to it because it holds a couple of L's on me. It made me feel, you know, bad. And not in like a grand scheme of things kind of way, but in a I wasn't good enough to do it and I feel a little sad about that. So when you come back and you've got a bit of that edge of nerves, you're curious then, like, oh, is this the hard bit? Is this the bad bit? I wonder if this is where the wall's going to be. And I'm happy to report, there was only a couple of walls, and that was the hardest one. So if you can do Silo, guys, you have it in you to do it all. But of course, preference is a huge thing here, and some of these levels might be a bit trickier for others. But the best time on that is at 4 minutes 31, as you saw, but I ended up messing up. And then we have Frigate. I love this level. There's a few levels on Goldeneye that are absolute classics, and then there's the ones that are my favourites. My 2 favourite missions is Frigate and Archives, and they're the 2 levels where there's tons and tons of enemies to shoot and you get really cool guns. This level is one of the easier ones to manage because of positioning. You can generally flank everybody, shoot them from behind. And you're also using a silenced MP5K, which comes in handy too, because it shoots very quickly, and it dispatches dudes quickly, and there's lots of ammo for it because they're all carrying 9mm. One of my favourite guns in the game is the guns that some of these fellas are using, which is known as is it the Phantom? In real life, I think it's called the Spectre. It was in Black Ops 1, and you can have 2 of them on this level, and they sound really cool. And I used to replay the living shit out of this one, just picking up those guns and going ham. And it's really funny too, because even on 00 Agent, there's not that much to do on this level other than making sure that the hostages survive and, you know, messing with the explosives and stuff. And this is another level where I didn't get a chance to really practice it too much because I remembered a lot coming off of playing it as a kid. And then when I did my practice run, I got the no damage, I think, first attempt. So then it just came to getting the recording, and for some reason just then that guy was aggroed. I'm not too sure why, but makes my life a little bit more difficult. But you are so strong in this game, and that's why I think I like it the most. I've come back to a lot of shooters in these last few years with more of a PC mindset, with more of a where the genre has really been. Because let's be honest, you know, I am a console kid, that's what I grew up with. Goldeneye was my shooter, and what a great shooter it was. But when you compare that this game came out after, I think, Quake, or around the time of Quake, this does not compare one bit to Quake as far as a fundamental, objective shooter. It just doesn't. We can't delude ourselves, right? However, when you look at it on the merits of what it did for console and what the system it was on was delivering at the time, this game is just an absolute spectacle. It is a wonderfully ambitious, a wonderfully just enjoyable and creative and ambitious project. And I wouldn't want it to be any different. And it's funny too, because when I come back and play this on mouse and keyboard, I'm having so much fun with it. And when I go back and play GoldenEye on the N64, it's still a great time, because it reminds you of all the stuff you used to love. But I'd be lying if I said that the control scheme doesn't feel a little bit more frustrating than it was when I was playing it every day as a kid. Because it's like any control scheme. It takes a while to get back used to it, and then you realise, yeah, it's pretty good, it does its job, it gets everything I need in my hands in a timely fashion. But when you use the mouse and keyboard on it, it almost feels like a new game. And some of the things about this game that were really ahead of the time that even Quake wasn't doing is this idea of stun, this idea of advantage, accuracy driving like advantage. In a lot of games that I play, I complain when enemies don't react to what I'm doing, you know? I get really, really, really mad and passionate about it because it's not how it should be. And then you have a game such as, like even the Dead Space remake did this, where the original Dead Space was a product of inspiration from Resident Evil 4. And Resident Evil 4 has a very consistent stun system. It underpins the mechanics of all the combat in that game. And it means that a person that understands the game can do really well and get consistent gameplay. And it leads to predictable, skillful engagements. And some people don't like that because they think it's boring, but I think that that's the best way a game can do anything. Because it means that if I'm playing correctly, I will always win. And that's what I'm looking to do, I'm looking to perform. GoldenEye has that, and it always had that. And there are many shooters in the next decade and 2 decades that have not used this feature that this game is doing so elegantly. The idea of being on target first and getting rewarded for it with safety is such a cool concept, and Perfect Dark took it forward and kept running with it. And it's so funny now when you play these games where when you shoot people it doesn't matter. They just hyper armor, or they don't care, or it doesn't affect their aim or anything. In this game it affects everything. And if they shoot you, they hurt. But there goes Frigate. And now we move back to the surface. So Surface 2 is a little trickier than the first surface. There's a nice colour palette change here as we come back with the sky and this bleeding ochre or whatever's going on with this dark colour. But again, the same logic applies. We're going to be moving through these dunes and taking on these enemies that all know where we are. For some reason, they run out of the draw distance in the distance and they come directly for you. But because they are so well programmed, they are beholden to this subset of systems they have to engage with. So in order to shoot at you, they have to get on your level. They have to be in front of you, facing you. If you're off that axis, they have to get to an axis where they can do that. And if you keep moving, they struggle to do that. And then finally, when they get into a position where the game says now you can shoot the player, they have to do these preordained movements. And at that point, if you get hit, it's your fault. Not only have they had to path to you in a very rigid manner, but then they've had to do a very elaborate dance, and now they're shooting. And all of this combines to something that's very satisfying, and it feels really skillful. And before I came back to this game and did this project, I probably would have fallen into the pitfall of saying that this was a more primitive shooter than it is. Because in my memory, you know, the game has a very sticky aim assist. You know, every game in these days had this aim assist where the game aims for you, because we've not quite figured out how to aim on controller yet. And admittedly, we still haven't, but we've come up with an idea that we've adhered to, and this game was one of those games that was pioneering it at the time, and doing it really well. And it also gave you a choice. It gave you the choice between using this assistance and using the free aim mode, which is really, really cool. But you add all these concepts together and you have yourself a pretty sophisticated game at a time where a lot of shooters were just health sponges, circle strafing, and mag dump everything with all the weapons you can find. So there's all these little facets to appreciate, and I do appreciate it, and it's so cool. And I'm really glad that I left it a decent amount of time, because maybe if I'd have come back any time sooner, I wouldn't have appreciated it the same. And I know that using this mouse injector has enabled me to look at this game with so much more fondness than I would have if I was wrestling with the controls again. But we need to blow up this helicopter, and you do not need to watch this helicopter blow up, but I wanted to watch it. And something that's interesting here is once you stick the mine on that, you're going to notice that the AI paths towards it, but they don't quite know where we are. I don't know if this is kind of a dead zone, but this guy runs all the way there, and it's almost like his AI turns off, so he just stands there. And you can see that later on in the game on certain enemies like Trevelyan and Jaws, where they stop doing their dedicated AI. Also, don't stand too close to doors when you open them, it can sometimes block them with collision. But there goes Surface 2, and now we move into one of the more demanding levels. It's Severnaya, isn't it? This place in Russia. So Bunker 2 is legendary. There are two parts of this game that I was really scared about when it came to thinking about what was going to give me trouble. The first one was Control, protecting Natalia, and then the next one after that is Bunker 2. So at the beginning of this infamous level, you have to use your watch magnet to get the key. When you do this, you then come out of here and you slap this dude, and if the magnet's still going off, you pick up some knives. The misaligned knives in Goldeneye are one of those things that, no matter how many years pass, I still hate them. Because I always felt that the throwing knives looked really cool. This is that weird effect I mentioned as well, guys. Did you see that? It looks like I've edited it, doesn't it? That I've kind of like put two pieces of footage together to kind of make them fit, but they don't quite fit. This is not me. It's doing it again. This is... And it's on a postcard, guys. If you've ever seen that before and you know what that is, I think it's an encoding error from OBS. I was playing this game with a Lamzu Atlantis, is it Pro? Mini Pro? And I was having problems where that mouse was like affecting my CPU and making it spike and making the mouse not feel good. So I ended up having to take it off. And I don't know if that had anything to do with it, and you can see it on the recording, but there it is. If you're wondering what that is, I'm wondering too. But in Bunker, the rules are simple. If you use a gun, you need to single fire it. Single fire the gun, you'll be fine. If you hold the trigger, you will set off infinite spawns of guards, and it's pretty much the most miserable thing you can imagine. It's really, really bad. What I wanted to do, it did it again. I wanted to use slapping and the knives to get around the whole problem here. And I'm going to show you how to do this by using the door as bait, by, you know, hitting and running, getting behind them, and also getting quite lucky sometimes. Because there's a lot of guards here, and some of them have got double guns, and the double gun guys, if you're going to get hit, it's going to be by them. But the idea is, you get two keys that allow you to open a safe, and when you open the safe, you get the silenced pistols. As soon as you get the silenced pistols, you can fight back. And again, I have another horror story on this mission, sadly. I did this mission first attempt after I practiced it for like 25 minutes, and I didn't go into that offshoot room and pick up that item in there, and I failed one of the objectives. Yeah, the capture here is having real problems. I do apologise about this, guys. Of all the levels to have capture problems on, why wasn't this on one of the bullshit levels that aren't difficult at all? Isn't it bloody typical, that? That move there as well. I've not had a chance to talk about that, but I'm going to do it now because it is nasty. So the majority of this, you've seen me disrespecting this game a lot. Very aggressive, up close, getting around their gun. They can't do anything to me. That move, that firing stance that soldier just did, where he runs forward hip firing, is the most accurate and most dangerous stance that the enemies have. If an enemy does that on the next few levels coming up and later down in the game, you get hit all the time. Like, I am not afraid of any firing stance except that one. And I didn't realise just how dangerous it was until I got to streets. On streets, because it's quite foggy and the draw distance is awful, they do that from full distance where you can barely see them and you just get tagged. And about the first half of this game, I wasn't getting hit that much. I was doing the no damage relatively simply. And it's not because I'm, the best player in the world or anything, it's just because the game is so balanced, and if you're aggressive, you can succeed. But then you hit that spike in like the last third, where they keep doing that move, and it just wrecks you. So be very careful with the running, hip-firing, like, Matrix from Commando stance, because it's real strong. And just be careful of the cameras here. There's a particular corner coming up that I got hit a few times on. It's coming up now. So if you come down here, there's two guys and then there's a third guy on the right. Shoot him, and then be careful here because the other guy turns up. And the reason this is tricky is because there's a camera to the left. That's all the guys now. You need to shoot the camera so you don't get seen. And the amount of times I went to shoot the camera and there was still a guy alive who shot me in the back happened like 3 times. I'm sad to admit, but it's true. And then this is the part that I missed, and it made me have to do this again. So in here, there's a soldier who drops like a dossier, I think. There's a lot of guys in here as well, so be very careful. But the double PPK is awesome. Or PP7, sorry. And of course, use the windows. And right there, did you see it? I just picked it up. That clipboard. That clipboard cost me everything. Don't make my mistake. And now all we need to do is go back into the center of the bunker, the control station. And there's a couple of dudes in here. And these guys like to do that running stance, so be really, really careful. One of the interesting things about Goldeneye 2 is it has an idle sway system. So there's times when the camera will just kind of rotate a little bit very softly. It's nothing too crazy, it's not quite Leon in the original Resident Evil 4 where it looks like he's shaking like a shitting dog. But it's enough sometimes for you to have to want to stabilise your aim instead of firing. And it's a full camera tilt as well. If you look at the edges of the screen, you can see it when I stand still. My guy starts to like lean forward a bit and lean back, and it can get in the way somewhat. And then right now, all we need to do is let Natalia out. So the trick here, guys, is if you save Natalia, you have to deal with her the whole time and things get hairy. But if you let her out late, after you've cleared the whole thing, you can run all the way to the door and you don't have to worry about protecting her. And that's the reason why Bunker 2 is not that bad. But don't get me wrong, guys, this is not an easy stage. There's a reason that this has a reputation. It can be quite mean, and again, I'm a bit paranoid. I checked the objectives, and there we go, I'm doing okay. Just escape with Natalia and we should be fine. Tick it off, let's move on. Very cool level though when you think about the time it came out. Absolutely legendary. Not a bad time as well. And then we move into the statue park in St. Petersburg. This was another mission I remembered. I mean, I remember all the missions on this game, just purely based on the fact I played them so much as a youngster. But I remember this level being a maze. I remember it being really big, really long, and I always struggled to find the cracker in that shipping container. Turns out, I was just a kid, and this level's really short. It's got one area that's kind of awkward to navigate, because you can look back on yourself by accident, but most of it is simple. And the only thing to bear in mind is that the enemies have those helmets, and if you hit the helmets, you won't hurt them because it bounces off. We also get introduced to that shotgun as well. There's a really interesting shotgun in this game that has the shells on the side of the gun. And if you unlock the cheats for all weapons, you can dual wield them. And I always loved that, but I was never good enough to get those cheats. I don't know about you guys, but those cheats, man. When I was younger, and you met people that could get those cheats, you looked at them like wizards. It's like they just knew something you didn't know. And it turns out getting most of the cheats is not too bad at all, because you can move so quick in this game. But it was just beyond my brain back in the day, so I only got the easy ones. This is interesting too. So you talk to Valentin, and he's going to go back on himself. This guy's going to turn up a bit later. If you've seen the movie, you kind of get the idea of what's going on here. But this isn't the first time we're going to find out who the villain is, unless you know who the villain is. And it involves walking up to a statue of, is it Lenin? And this is the bit where it's easy to go back on yourself. But if you keep moving forward instead, and you go right, you go to the proper way, which is this. And I wanted to show you that, guys, just in case you make the mistake I made when I was a kid. So I just used to go all the way back to the start of the level, and I didn't realise I'd done it, and I thought it was impossible. But you come up to this statue, and you need to take your gun off as well. If you don't take your gun off, you will fail. Do not run towards Trevelyan and his team here. Obviously, I've come back to this, I'm much more confident than I was as a kid. I didn't give a shit. I ran straight towards him and I failed. Just stand near the statue, let the dialogue talk. He makes a joke because you took the gun off. And then you'll notice we've got these 4 dudes with shotguns. So all you're going to do, move behind the statue, and then as soon as it says mission completed, pull your gun out and start wrecking fools, and just use the cover that you can to get rid of these guys. The bait here is to use the shotgun, because you think, oh, it's a shotgun, it's going to be really good. But it turns out the shotgun's actually not that good. The KF7, though, is supreme. And it's fascinating, because when you press it lightly, you get either 1 to 3 shots when you tap the fire button. When you hold the fire button, you get flat auto, so depending on how you engage with the trigger, depends on what the gun does. And I think that's a pretty damn elegant solution for so early on in a shooter. And it's an interesting thing to have trigger control and burst control all the way back on the N64. This is something that people don't do now in Battlefield and the mill sims, but alas here, we've got it plain to see. And then when you get to Natalia, the timer changes and you have to get her away from the helicopter before it explodes. And I made a mistake here on my practice run, because I didn't realise at the end you were meant to surrender. So I killed everybody twice, and I couldn't figure out why I was doing it wrong. And I managed to kill them without taking any damage as well, but you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to surrender so you can go into the archives. But this section coming up has a bit of randomness to it. So once the helicopter explodes, you need to look for the flight box, this thing here, flight recorder. And it can be in multiple places. That one is the easiest, and the attempt before this, when I killed everybody and failed, it was way deeper. But if you take your weapon off, you can walk through here and you can go into the BJ gates, which... good gates to go through, I would imagine. And then there's this interesting cutscene of them marching us off. And then we can go into another one of the legendary levels that I really love, which is Archives. So back when I was a youngster, I played this level to death because it had 2 pistols in it, which are called, I think they're Dostavets or something like that. These guys have them, DD44 Dostave. I used to call them Dostavals. And you can dual wield them on this level, and there's that weird emulator problem, or whatever. And they reminded me of the guns that Antonio Banderas used in Desperado, which was a film I was obsessed with when I was a kid. And you know the ones if you've seen it. If you've never seen that movie, you need to, it's fantastic. So I would just play this level on repeat using those guns and pretending that I was the mariachi with the guitar case filled with guns. Something to bear in mind on this level is there's enemies everywhere, and there's lots of things that explode. And you can use these explosions to your benefit if you funnel everybody towards you and blow some things up. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to run and gun, because this is what I used to do when I was younger. And a couple of things I noticed on this is, the level itself is not that difficult, but there seems to be lots of transient spawns. And I couldn't quite figure them out. They seem to come the whole duration. Sometimes they come through certain doors, other times not so much. And after I recorded this, I went and watched some of the videos by that Graz guy. There's a dude on YouTube that's like a 007 channel, and he's done this game, no damage on 00 Agent multiple times and all the other things, and he's a very good player, very learned player. He does it on hardware and whatnot, does it on the N64 controller, like some really, really cool stuff. And when I watched his video, he said that the easiest way to do this level was stealth, and I can see that being the case. You can do it really quickly when nobody knows you're here, but that wasn't what I was going for at all, because I've never played this level for stealth. This level for me is learning to bang, and you'll notice I keep my head on a swivel because the enemies come from everywhere. And to me, this is what I enjoy. This is the type of shooting that really resonates with my heart. It's just moving around, being alert, being quick, being faster than them, and just causing chaos. Always checking your back, always getting ready to just pepper a shot and stun an enemy. And hopefully it's fun to watch. Because the thing with Goldeneye is it's such a nostalgia trip for me. And it was cool because I recorded this just after Christmas. Before I came back to the stream in the new year, I had some time and I wanted to do some stuff for me. One of the things that kind of sucks about YouTube and streaming and everything is there's not a lot of time and justification to be able to play things for yourself, because you always feel like you could be doing it to make money or doing it for an audience and whatnot, and it changes how you look at things. And it's one of those things that it's entirely self-inflicted, but it does make you think in an odd way. And I don't always enjoy it because it can be a bit frustrating. And when I came to this, I just wanted to test the mouse to see how it felt. And I started playing, and when I hit damn and the music and the sound and the sights and just all those memories came flooding back, it was such an awesome moment, and I really needed it too. Like, gaming has definitely been having some low moments for me personally recently, and playing this really does solidify why I am as passionate about games as I am, and why I get so angry when they're trash. Because you can say a lot of things about Goldeneye, but it's not trash. So coming back to play it was just such a good feeling. And then I realised, I was like, hang on a second here. I did that level without getting hit. Can you no damage this game? So I do a search, and of course, I see that Graz guy's runs, no damage. I see someone else's runs, no damage. I see Carcinogen's run, no damage. It's like, ooh, there's a lot of people that have done this then, so it's definitely possible. Let's see what we can come up with. And I turned it into a project, and I had a really good time as we talked to this guy. So one of the things I didn't know about this level until this run, and you'll see me deliberate because I got this really quickly. I didn't know if you had to go and find where Natalia runs off to before you left, and I was just going to go out the window and hope it was going to see her in the cutscene. I think I would have failed if I'd done that, so you'll notice I get to a moment where I want to leave, but I don't know where she is. And because this level has lots of these weird spawns happening, I was kind of scared I was going to get snuck up on or get hit by somebody. You can see me here. I'm listening to this guy. I keep checking the door. I'm not doing that to make it more tense than it needs to be. I'm doing that because I'm expecting it to open any moment. And I want to be on top of it. And right here, you can leave. But because I don't know where she is, I start to second guess it a little bit. And it's been over 2 decades since I was last in the archives. So, you know, my memory's pretty damn good. And I do remember this level, but I don't remember the nuance. And I end up moving all the way back to the start where those interrogation rooms are, and she's in one of those rooms. So I double check here, I look at the objectives, I'm like, can I just leave? But because it says do it with her, I'm like, yeah, I probably need to aggro her somehow. So I'm going to go on a little bit of an adventure. And usually, guys, if this wasn't single segment, I would edit this out. I'd do a crossfade of me finding her and then we'd leave, and it might save you guys some time. But this is not that kind of project, you know. I've made lots of projects where I've streamlined it where it's just the action and it's nothing else. This is raw as can be. And there's a lot of enemies here, and I got surprised. There's 2 guys behind me. And luckily, Goldeneye is a very kind and giving game when it wants to be. If that was Aztec, dude, I died 10 times in that room before I shoot anybody. But when I did my practice runs, there were no soldiers in that courtyard. I don't know where they came from. And every so often in levels, enemy placements slightly change. I don't know if there's like 2 presets and the game just rotates between them, but you will fall habit of this yourself, and you'll start assuming someone's going to be somewhere and they might not be there, and then there's someone else, and somewhere else, sorry, and you've got to figure it out. But if you come in here, she's here. And you know what's really funny about this game is the memories are embedded so deep. As soon as I came back to this room, I remembered it. I remembered that she stood there. And it was that weird thing of like, oh yeah, damn. Dude, I've not thought about that for a long time. But you can go out the windows to the left here if you want to. You don't have to go out the window I'm going to show you. But again, old habits die hard. I always went out of the bottom windows ever since I was younger. So that's what you're going to see. But I don't know where she is because, like, the AI and the pathing is kind of squirrely. But there she is, we find her. And there was only a couple of moments where the AI got a bit fucky. This one, in the jungle, and then later on the Caverns with the scientists where they just kept standing near the computers. And when you think about how sophisticated AI was back in these days, this companion AI is actually pretty impressive. Because she does a lot of things, and this had it ever been done at this point in this kind of way? Like, Goldeneye really was ahead of its time in so many ways. And I'm not going to say it's good AI, because it's fucking terrible, but it's AI at a time where it wasn't there. Like, this is a cutting edge. This is the fringe right here of design. And she's with me, so now I can leave. A little bit slower than it could have been, but there you go, guys. Archives is done. I adore that level so much. And now we get to move on to some levels I don't adore. Which I think the next one is Streets, isn't it? I wasn't looking forward to this mission at all, because I was under the impression you had to use the tank. And I can confidently tell you, ladies and gentlemen, you do not need to use the tank. However, this level is hard. And it's tricky, because there's the draw distance. So I don't really even know what this is. Is it because there's no fog or something? Is this an emulator problem? I can't honestly say, but what I can tell you is that you cannot see the enemies before they see you because they don't populate on the screen. And I don't know if there's a setting on the emulator I can turn on that changes this, but I'd love to do it. Because there's about 4 levels in this game that would be way easier if you could actually see the threats before they see you. And be careful of this doorway because those enemies are going to come. My strategy here is to be as swift as I can to talk to Valentin to get the extension on the time limit. And I'm going to move through the streets, and I'm going to try my best to make some judgment calls on when to peek, when to shoot, and when to move. There are mines, just in case you want to take the tank. There are a couple of guys that have rockets, and the rocket sound is such a scary sound, dude. I'd not heard it in a long time, and when it fired, it was just this thunderbolt to my childhood. And luckily they're projectiles, so you can get away from them, but be very careful, the splash is huge. But I don't really know the map on this sequence, so I don't know where I'm going. I just kind of move and I get where I need to be. And it took a few attempts, this, because I got shot a lot. This was at the moment where I realised just how easy it is to get hit when they crank the AI a bit. And if you're wondering about that, I did a little bit of Googling to see if I could figure out what was going on, and it seems that when you beat the game on 00 Agent, you unlock 007. And 007 difficulty enables you to change all the stats of the enemies, about how much damage they do, their alertness, their accuracy, things like that, their HP. And I think 00 Agent has that quite cranked, but it's not too, like, fully cranked. I think some stats are a little bit lower. But what I can tell you, just by, empirical evidence, is that there are certain levels where the AI is better than it is on other levels in certain areas. And I don't really know, like, the justification for it or what the thought process behind a lot of it is. But most levels are set to the 00 standard, which is the enemies are dangerous, but you can circumvent them by playing smart. And then every so often you hit those guys, like the double gun totting, like black commando guys with the berets, and those guys just turn it on you. And then when you get to Cradle, dude, oh my god, Cradle. Just wait till we get there. You're going to watch the video and you're going to be like, well, this looks like you're cheating, Chris, because it was way harder for me. And I feel you, dude, I really do. Cradle is obscene. And it's obscene in a way that makes it really hard, but it doesn't make it really fun. And it's fascinating. I wonder if you go on 007 and you crank everything to the top, does that feel like how they feel on Cradle and Aztec? Because if it does, ooh, good luck on that. Absolutely brutal. And the thing is, like, there's part of me that looks at that and thinks, I'd like to play that and I'd like to test that. But there's all these things that crop up. And the first one is, it's really annoying restarting in this game. There's no, like, pause, restart instantly. You might be able to do that on a hotkey with the emulator, but I didn't look into it. So restarting can be legitimately annoying sometimes. And then your accuracy is limited to the accuracy of the guns you're using. So even though I'm using mouse and keyboard and I'm putting a dot on people and firing, sometimes you miss. You miss just because the gun misses. And of course, that's fair. That's something that lots of games do and they like it. But you need to not miss in this game a lot of the times, because if you hit them first, you win. So the idea of these enemies being super cranked and being at the reliance of all of these factors, it just doesn't sound as fun, you know? And that's one of the things I want to stress about this project. This was a lot of fun. You know, up until we hit Train, which I had a lot of trouble on Train, which for some reasons I'll explain, up until we hit Cradle, up until we hit Control. And you might be thinking Control's legendary. Well, you know the bit I struggled on? The first part. I shit you not. It was awful. And then stuff like Aztec, where it's just really, really, really mean. But the idea of Depot here is you have to come into these different warehouses and you have to do the objectives. This one, you need to blow up. And you'll notice that movement here and stunning is really powerful, you should be fine. You can also get double MP5Ks, which is really nice. But the problem with this stage, and the reason it's not going to be as clean as I would like, is the enemies constantly spawn, and they just keep coming at you, and they're all pretty dumb, and they're not that bad, but you can't ever feel like you know where you are, because you're just constantly being assailed. And I don't like that at all. I wish this level had set spawns, I wish Cradle had set spawns, I wish lots of levels had set spawns, because I just think it's a better game like that. But be very careful when you open the shutters here, because there tends to be 2 or 3 guys stacked up on them. Luckily, these guards, their accuracy, their awareness, and their general ability seems really low compared to some levels. So you can just kind of run around and do what you need to do. And you can see how powerful movement is, like, they just can't do anything to it. And the thing with Goldeneye is, because the game aims for you a lot, on 00 Agent the aim assist is softer than it was on the other difficulties, which makes it a bit more tricky. But like, you can be so confident in how you engage with people if you know where they are. And speaking of knowing where they are, this whole place is a bloody maze. It's a real maze, and the bit I struggled with is there's a warehouse with a key in it on a desk, and I just couldn't find it. So you'll see me going into all these wrong places, and one of these has a turret in it, which is really scary. But it's funny because the recording run here was way more relaxed than the practices. So 2 guys here, I remembered that. Is this the turret? It is. So you haven't seen these too often, and you want to thank the gods that that's the case, because the turrets ruin the game, if you ask me. They're not even close to fun. They're too tanky, they're too accurate, and they fire too fast. But if you know where they are, you can peek and you can kill them without them even activating. Sadly, sometimes you try to do it and they just shoot you anyway. They can also shoot through cover too. I've had a few instances where the turrets have hit me through cover. I also had an instance on Control where I got shot through glass that they can't shoot through, which was really weird. Because it was meant to be a safe spot, or it seemed like it, because nobody'd hit me the last 2 times I attempted it, and then of course on the recording, I get shot. And it was really frustrating too, because I did it successfully. I did the Defend Natalia moment. But I got shot once through a wall. So I had to move my strategy and try somewhere else, and I'm glad I did that because I found a better strategy. Which I should probably talk about Control a little bit, because it's going to be here before we know it. But my original strategy for Control was to stand up on the balcony and then shoot them on the stairs. And what happens is I was going absolutely fine, killing loads of people, fully in control, and then they spawn a guy behind me, silently, who shoots me in the back. And because he did that, it made me think it was a bad place to stand. So then I started trying to find a way on the ground to do it. And then I tried for like 30 minutes to do the ground strat, and it just wasn't working because they kept coming through the glass at the sides and instantly killing her. And then I went back up onto the balcony and I did it. So my strategy was good, I just got put off it because of this random bullshit spawn. Which we'll talk about later on, because that section on Control is just mean. But this level, when you think about it, in spite of the enemies constantly spawning and it being quite big, it's pretty simple, isn't it? And just then, like, people shooting real close to me but not hitting me as I just keep trying to look for this silly table. And again, guys, if you're watching this because you need to know how to navigate the level, this is not the run for you. You know, I'm not going to be that guy. Most of the levels I do a concise job of navigating. This one's bad, though. This is about as rough as my run goes. Fortunately, all the other levels are fine. Is this the table? This is not the table. Oh my goodness, you're probably watching this and being like, it's that one, Chris, it's that one, you missed it. I did. It's tragic, isn't it? But at least I get to shoot some people and show you more of these awesome guns. And the legendary reloads. But this project came about because I was really curious about the mouse injector on the Dolphin. So the GameCube emulator's got some really, really cool features, and apparently it feels really good. So I want to go back and try Time Splitters 2 and Time Splitters Future Perfect. I never finished Time Splitters 2 on hard back in the day. The game is really, really tough. I think I got to the robot factory and I just kind of put it down. So I want to go back and get some revenge using mouse and keyboard and having a good time. Is this the one? Hey, here we go. The key's in here. So remember that place, guys. As soon as you pick that key up, you can leave. Hopefully it takes you less time than it took me. But did you see just then how he was shooting at me before he was visible on the game? That's the limit of the draw distance right there. I'm going to look to see whether or not there's a way to circumvent that, because it just doesn't feel fun. And especially considering, did you know, guys, that people have made other James Bond campaigns that you can play through in their entirety? How crazy is that? And I really love the idea of it too. They've gone in there with the assets of Goldeneye and all the mechanics and the engine and everything, and just created Goldfinger, I think is one of them. So you can play the entirety of Goldfinger, start to finish. And then you can play, I think it's Tomorrow Never Dies, and I think they might have even done the Spy Who Loved Me. And they're full campaigns as well. And you go to these certain websites and you like flash your ROM, and then when you start it, you press damn, but it takes you somewhere else and all the levels are different. And it's just amazing, that kind of love being just resonating. And now we have an incredibly challenging level. For a couple of bad reasons though, it must be said. This is the train, and it seems like a lot of people struggle with these first two zones here. And I didn't have any problems fighting my way through the first two rooms. That's why you'll see me being so bloody ballsy on that one, because I had to do this level a lot. I had problems with Natalia dying at the end, or there's a section where you go into a green carriage where there's a bunch of guys dual wielding, and those dual wielding guys snuck up on me a few times and caught me off guard, and I was getting really salty because I did the mission and then Natalia died. And I later learned that if you shoot Zinnia after you shoot the Russian guy, you get more time on this level, and that's the reason why she dies. I also learned that if you kill the three guys after you exit the train and you stay down there with her, she avoids the explosion and you can just leave normally. If I'd have known those things, I wouldn't have struggled on this level at all, but I didn't know it, so instead I just ended up getting lucky. But the trick to those first two rooms, if you are struggling, is just peeking and hitting them and making sure they don't blow the boxes up, which is kind of RNG, but you can stand in certain places where it's a bit better. And then on this sequence, every time you make noise, certain doors will open with enemies, and if you break the brakes of the train, it triggers doors that were previously locked to open. And they're the same doors every time, so if you do this train a few times, you learn where they come from, and you learn when to go back on yourself. Like right now, I knew these two guys were going to be there, so I just pre-fired them, because I knew that that's how that's going to work. And most of these rooms are easy, except for this one up here. This is where it gets dangerous, because it's dudes with two guns who are really, really, really cranked. And this room can have 3 people in it. I don't know why it alternates between the like one guy on his own and 3 dudes, but it does. And then there's a lot of these cheeky traps where they come out of side doors and they try to overwhelm you. And then later on what happens is when you break the machine again that you need to break for the objective, behind you is another spawn that sneaks up on you. So when I break this, I'm going to turn around, that door's going to open, and there's going to be a guy with double guns. Or at least a single gun. So don't get snuck up on by him, that guy's a douche. And then in here there's one guy on the right, and then when you break the brakes, 2 enemies are going to open the door on the back, and you need to kill them and get a key. So if you destroy that, you get the objective, and then when you turn around, you got to wait for these guys. Be careful killing these guys too close to the door, you will fail instantly because Natalia will get executed. But moving into this room, you can get a lot closer than I do, but I shoot immediately. And as long as you hit Zinnia, you'll have enough time to do this. But use your watch on the floor square and wait for Natalia to start hacking. And what happens is apparently there's a piece of dialogue here where Zinnia says, "Wait, Trevelyan, I've been shot." and that gives you enough time for her to use the console, but she does take her sweet time, which is really frustrating. And I must have failed this level like 6 times because she kept dying. Very frustrating, guys, because it's easy to get hit here. This is one of the more difficult levels in the game by a large margin. I don't think it's as bad as Silo, I don't think it's as bad as Aztec. I would say that it's not as bad as Control, but it's definitely one that you can lose a lot of time to. And it's funny because I like the level. I love the train sequence. I just hate this part. This part here is shit. And here's how you know that you've done it. When it gets to 30 seconds and she starts talking about the password, you'll have enough time to get off the train. If it's at 10 seconds when you get that objective done, you don't have enough time for her to make it to the other side, so you have to go the other way. But at this point, you should be okay. And then she'll go, and it'll complete on the next one. There you go. So when you drop down, there's 3 guys. Kill these 3 guys. If you have no time, sit down there where those guys were on those boxes, and you'll dodge the explosives and then you can run. If you've got the time, run to the end and you'll trigger the escape. This level pissed me off something fierce. I really, really didn't enjoy it. But it's because there was a bit of a gimmick and I didn't know it. If you know the gimmick, you'll be okay. And then that takes us to the next stage. I even got a cheat, look at that. Blessed. But the train is done. Now I get to play on the jungle. Jungle was one of those levels I was conscious of because it has a boss fight on it against Zinnia on a top. Good old Famke Janssen. A delightful piece of candy in this movie, who kills people by asphyxiating them with her sexy hips. And I'm not kidding. But the jungle is a really weird level. It's a weird level because not only does it have an infinite spawn, but it also has problems with its draw distance, and it has turrets. So if you were to write a list of all the shitty parts about beating Goldeneye on 00 Agent, taking no damage, everything present in this level would be what I would put on that list. And it's pretty simple at the start. You move through, there'll be multiple guards leading to a gun, and you need to know your distances here or you're just going to get shot. And they're dropping one of the best guns in the game, which is the AR. The AR has a zoom when you aim with it, and it can wallbang, so shoot through objects with it. It's really cool. It also sounds great, and it does a lot of damage. So I'm going to save it until later on, but up here, if you turn your camera to the right, you can see beyond the draw distance. Did you see that? You can see the turret just by turning. The center of the screen is, for whatever reasons, obfuscated on the view. If you turn completely, like, is it 45 degrees to the right or left, you can see through the haze and see where things are, and I'm going to use that on this level to great effect. You can also zoom with the gun if you want to, but I didn't do that. But you can see the draw distance here being really, really strange. This is another one of those levels as a kid I remember being a maze, and it's not a maze at all. I just apparently did not have good object permanence or something. But the thing that shot us then is just these guys with the guns, and underneath that hut in the distance, see it just there, the gun. You can see it. You can't see it when I'm looking though, and I'm using it to line up where it is in relation, and then I'm going to try and hit it. And because everything explodes in Goldeneye, you can see when you kill things, so wait for the explosion and you'll be okay. Boom, there it goes. And then moving forward now, there'll be the last refuse of guards, and we're going to be moving on towards the caverns. The caverns are where this gets hard after you kill Zinnia. So if you move over to the left here, and you touch this lip, it will trigger her to turn up. Right there. Then all you do, stand on this other side, and if you notice, if I turn the camera again to the left, I can see her before the draw distance tells me she's coming, and I just see her on the bridge, and I'm just going to shoot her. This was actually a slow kill, believe it or not. Usually you kill her in the first 2 bursts, but I couldn't get proper shots. And then just be careful of that gun up there, and then use these big trees as cover. Because again, we're going to have more guards knocking about here. And then there's the cave to the right. So in the cave there is multiple enemies, and there's a gun. And I'm going to be using that trick with the draw distance, turning my camera so I can see. There was the gun, I don't know if you noticed it. And then there's a couple of dudes that'll just line up here, so I need to be careful. There's one right there. Boom, there's another one right there. And he's coming because he heard the gun. I got quite frustrated with this stage because I didn't like the idea of the design coming up. there's a ladder with a turret and another turret near it, and I've seen people afterwards who just run past the turrets and don't get hit by moving diagonally, but when I tried to run past them, I got hit a lot. So I decided to try and shoot them with the grenade launcher, and it didn't work, and then I climbed the ladder and shot them manually, and that did work. But the real issue is, there's a sequence coming up that combines infinite spawns, bad draw distance, and you have to clear them out so you can get to the elevator at the end of the stage, and I just don't think it makes the stage better. I think it just makes the stage bad. And it's a shame too, because lots of these levels are really fun, and then this one's just not. You just can't... I don't like the feeling that I'm not in control. I like learning spawns, I like learning where to be and how to move and what to do. I don't like these variables that turn up and just make everything nowhere near as consistent as they need to be. It's not fun for me. So here's my first strategy here. I do that to try and hit the turret, and I blow the cache up, which is really funny. And then I didn't know if you could use a gun on the ladder, so I start climbing, and I notice that you can. So as I get to the top here, I'm going to try and hit the turret before it activates, and if you hit it with one good burst from this gun, it should die. And boom, I hit it. And as soon as I killed that turret, I knew I could get beyond the other one, and it was just the infinite spawn that I had to worry about. This whole sequence here it's just not good. And you need to destroy these crates here, but I need to get rid of him, so he's dead. There's the crate, there's that crate. And then now, I'm going to move towards this middle pillar here, and you can't see anything, but they're all shooting at me. There's loads of guys here. So clear the guys out on the left, keep peeking, make sure they go down. None of these soldiers are all that cranked, luckily. Again, if this was Cradle, I'd already be dead 10 times over, but it's not. So clear them out, and then as soon as there's no one on the left-hand side, you want to start strafing that direction and then killing the guys on the right. If you do this, you stay ahead of the spawn. And now, as soon as you get on this corner, there's maybe 1 or 2 guys left. And I get really lucky here because there's nobody here, but usually there's about 3 people in this corridor. And then once you've done that, you're over. It doesn't look like much, but believe it or not, that level is a pain. Definitely not my favourite. And speaking of not my favourite, we get to perhaps the most famous mission on 00 Agent, the Control Center in Cuba. So I don't like this level, I never have. This was the level when I was younger that just seemed impossible, and I'm sure lots of you have had very similar experiences as well with it. The start here is a nightmare. Unless you hold aim and peek, you just get pieced up by these guns. It is particularly cruel. The only real upside of making as many mistakes on this stage as I did is that you do get quite good at angling it and understanding how to stand. And this is good practice for Aztec as well, because there's a couple of turrets on that. It's also good practice for Caverns, because there's a couple of turrets on that. And there's just a lot of design choices in this level that I don't get. And I know that they're trying to give us these different gameplay experiences and they're trying to adhere to what happened in the movie, but you kill the enemies here and then Natalia goes to hack a panel. And it leaves you to just stand in this room now, doing nothing, waiting for a door to open. And this is the second part of this stage where you have to stand and wait for nothing to happen, basically, and it kills the pacing. When you consider that the traditional difficult part of this stage comes later on, you have to keep doing this just to get to it. And I think this is why it's so legendary in people's minds, because it wastes your time, and I just don't really understand why this first part even exists. And once you come in here, you need to kill these guys quickly, and then this is where you'll get pre-fired here if you're not careful. These guys love throwing grenades, so keep an ear out. There's one there. If you stand near those grenades, it's an instant wipe. They just kill you. And you can hear another one too. Like, these guys love to throw nades. This is a particularly tricky sequence too. The smoke does not help us either, because we can't see through it as much as they can. But as soon as you've done these first two sequences, this level gets a lot easier. And the big area that lots of people are scared of is protecting Natalia. And for good reason too. It's a difficult segment until you realise that if you stand on the top area, you can control it really well. And if you control it really well, you won't be too worried about it in the future. The second scary bit for me comes after you've done the area protecting her, where you have to get to the elevator. Because there's a room that you go into where there's a bunch of guys in it who are all pretty cranked. Not too cranked, we're not talking Cradle just yet. But they're pretty beefy, and then Trevelyan himself is waiting to shoot at you, and at that moment, because there's enemies that are being generated, the spawns are constantly happening to feed enemies towards you, You have to be careful of people being in places they weren't when you were practicing. And on this particular run, we get one of those moments where I go to get in the elevator and there's somebody where they should not be and they almost kill me. So you need to be very careful, and it's the same with this room here. This room has 2 of the guns. The biggest weakness of the guns is distance, so if you're at a distance they won't aggro at all, and just then I got really lucky with that guy behind me. There's 2 guys up here, but I didn't think they'd aggro. He did, because he heard my gun. He did not. Because that other guy aggroed, I came up to kill him. And then you just put your grenades on all of the areas you need to put them on, and then we're going to get into position to do the next sequence. Entering this room where those turrets were is kind of tricky because there's 2 more turrets inside. I watched a few people do this stage after I did it to see if they do it any different to me, and lots of people like to run into this room. I had a strategy where I was peeking to shoot the room, but it took a little bit too long, so I got bored of that and instead I just bomb it in here running diagonally. And it does work, but I like to kill at least 1 turret first just in case. So if you peek here you can see the camera and you can blow him up, and then I run across there like that. On the videos I watched, people just ran in here and had no problems, so if you're struggling getting that angle, just bomb in here and hopefully it won't be a problem. But now we can peek and kill the turret accordingly and we won't have any issue with him. And then we set up for the part that we were all waiting for. And it's interesting, isn't it, just how much something can live in your memory. How you can be haunted by something that is essentially 2 minutes. 2 minutes and you've done it. But it's a very stressful 2 minutes for a lot of younger people that have now matured. And when you come down here, Natalia will speak and she's going to go into position. So the best place to stand, it seems, is up on this balcony. And this particular spot here I went on to learn is what everybody does when you look on some of the other no damage runs. This seems to be the most popular area. And the idea is, they're going to come from directly in front of me, but because there's a railing here, the enemies will try to path to me to attack me instead of shooting me. And in the time it takes them to do that, I can kill them. And there's 2 types of enemy. There's an enemy that targets Natalia, who will not go for me, and there's an enemy that targets me, who will not go for Natalia. As long as you know which one is which, you'll understand where they're going to be and what they're going to do. The biggest risk here is the bells that you just heard. That means that the doors are opening downstairs and someone's going to come up. That guy right there. Whenever you hear those rings, it means those guys are spawning as well. So keep your awareness up. And all you do is kill them. And when you run out of ammo, you move forward and pick up some bullets where they're all coalescing. And then you keep your head on a swivel because there's a 1 random spawn. Remember earlier on in the walkthrough I said they spawned a guy behind me? He's the only threat here. At some point, there is 1 dude that's going to turn up and he's going to come from the left or the right. And he tends to turn up about 1.5 minutes into the defense. But keep on looking left and right whenever you kill a wave, just to make sure he's not sneaking up on you. But because we're in a bit of a recess here, he has to move to be directly facing us to shoot us. So he's not just going to stand at the side and snipe us like he would if it was a modern game. But I keep glancing, no one's there, keep shooting. And this gun is really, really good for this because it shoots very fast. And there we go, there's a spawn, boom, kill him. He's dead, no problems whatsoever. And then we just continue doing it. And this looks really easy because it is. And trust me guys, this is not an easy room, it's not easy to do this. If you do it downstairs, I failed like 6 times trying to do it downstairs. It's really, really tricky. And then I had 1 run where I did it perfectly, and then I got shot through a wall. Like, it's just random. Sometimes it's really manageable, and sometimes it's impossible. And it doesn't seem to have any middle ground. So, for me, why mess with that kind of unpredictability when you can just do this, and this is very consistent. And you always know, when you go and watch other people do it to see how they did it, and they do it just like this, you know how strong this is, that all the players experiment and they find this. And I don't know what the speedrunners do, because I've not checked that. But I would imagine it looks a lot like this, because it has to be quick. And then once the objective is done, we then have to blow up one of those servers that's waiting for us in a room on the ground floor. And then we need to make our way to the elevator to get out of here. But right now we can leave. So I'm just going to wait for an opening and I'm going to try and pick up some ammo. One of the big threats here is getting stuck because the collision's kind of shit. But come down here, open this door, throw a mine in, and then detonate the mine on that window. And then all we need to do now is move to the other side and change weapons. Don't get caught with your pants down like I do all the fucking time. This room has like 4 guys in it. Be very careful, and be careful behind you because there's another enemy coming. So kill him. Make sure no one else is there, and then clear out the rest of the guys in this room. And once you do this, you go straight forward. There's a guy to your left, a guy to your right, there's Trevelyan, and then there's the dude who's going to spawn. Maybe a good idea here would be to shut this door as you exit through it. I don't do it, and it nearly bites me. That guy nearly shoots me. I shoot at Trevelyan. I turn around here, and there's a guy there. That guy right there. And then another guy. Do you see him? Hairy. Very hairy. But I was happy to be done with that stage, because it was definitely one of the hardest. It took about 40 minutes, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but I was resetting at the start a ton. And you guys don't get to see that, but trust me, it exists, and it sucked. And now we do Caverns. So Caverns would be a really fun level if it wasn't for the fact that there's two parts that are really cheesy. The first one is that there is a computer that you need to use to talk to somebody, and they put it bang behind two guys you need to shoot. And if you shoot those guys, you'll shoot straight through their bodies and blow the computer up. And all around these people is explosives, so if you shoot the explosives, you blow the computer up. You see where I'm going with this, right? They intentionally made these three soldiers absolute arseholes for no other reason than to make this level awkward and difficult. And it works, it becomes really bothersome. The second troubling part is right at the end of the stage, once you've done all of that nonsense, is there's a corridor with two turrets where Trevelyan is, and when you open that corridor, it spawns a bunch of guys behind you with RCPs, and there's like 3 or 4 of them, and it's quite a dynamic spawn. And I did this whole level on a recording, everything worked great, and as I was crouching to shoot the turrets to get to the exit, I got shot from behind by a guy, like the 5th guy that turned up, and I was really salty. I got all the way to the end of this level as well, and I blew up a computer, killed a scientist and failed. So I had all this weird misfortune with this stage, and I don't really know why, but it led to being a little frustrated in spite of the fact I think this is a really fun level. And it's fun because it's lots of gunfights. To me, if all that computer shit wasn't there and those turrets and that spawn weren't there, I'd be completely okay with this level. It'd be one of my favourites. And as much as this area here is kind of high concept and quite impressive for the N64, it's a complete and utter waste of time. There's almost nothing to do in this room. And this stage has really unique doors, because they take ages to open, and they're like hexagonal. But the cool thing is the rooms that they lead to, they tend to have these viewing chambers just to the left of the doors, where if you shoot the glass, you can get the attention of people inside, and they'll come through the doorway. So if you're having any problems with these gunfights and engaging with these enemies, just bait them by shooting the glass. And then these boxes in Goldeneye tend to drop guns. They do in Perfect Dark as well. You can get a Devastator on Villa if you know what you're doing, you know? I use it sparingly through this run because you get some mines and I don't use the mines. So I'm going to throw them at the ground just to refill some of my 9mm. And the two bullet sources you're going to be using here are going to be the assault rifle with the, is it 7.62 or whichever the bigger bullet is, the NATO one. And then there's going to be the 9mm. And if you start running low on 9, just swap to the assault rifle, and if you start running low on the assault rifle, swap to anything that uses the 9mm. These guns, the double Uzis, are really fun, but they're loud. The RCP is a much better choice because it's really, really awesome and really fun to use. I ended up sleeping on it completely because I kept forgetting to swap to it because you pick it up quite late, but it's one of my favourite guns. And that right there, guys, that wasn't a transition or anything, that was the capture being weird. It's done it earlier on. I have no idea what that is, but it makes it look like we're going into a portal of the game itself. Very bizarre, very trippy. We'll keep moving forward. There's a couple of weird spawns in this area, and I'm not entirely convinced what they are. But this one here, 2 on the top, 1 on the bottom. And then the one guy that's guarding the door moves forward, and the one guy that's patrolling on the catwalk below is there. I always go for the tricky computer first, because if you mess it up, you don't have to do as much. And there's a couple of areas here where this can get real bad, just because of how many enemies there are. But again, you are in control here because you're so capable and the game is so fair. And be careful when you turn around. There's usually a guy here that turns and shoots. Sometimes there's 2. And then the door to that room to our left, if you shoot and hit the glass and get attention, they'll start coming through the doorway. So keep your head on a swivel just in case. But I didn't disturb anybody this time. And then, oh no, I did. Here we go, this guy. So the assortment to this room, guys on the left, there's those 2. Guys on the opposite side, 1 over there, and then there's the guys in the middle. This guy always pushes and starts throwing a grenade. Now there's 2 guys on the right in this little hub, and 1 on the left. I'm going to peek and hit him. That's the computer you cannot shoot. Be very careful. I'm going to peek and hit his friend. That guy. And then there's one guy left. And then there's the scientist. Be very careful here. If you blow up that computer and you kill the scientist, you might fail because you might have already killed another one somewhere. And then it's just a case now of getting all your ammo back and waiting for people to relocate. So there goes the computer. Now the computer's done. We're going to go back onto the catwalk and we're going to go into that other chamber that we didn't go in. And there's 2 key cards you can pick up here that let you go to that T-shaped junction. Depending on which ones you pick up will depend on which ones open. And when the trap at the end happens, those doors open, and that's where the guys come from. It's just a bit mean if you ask me. It's completely unnecessary. Like at this point you've gone through a lot of gunfights, and this room's pretty tricky too. There's a scientist debating you here, don't shoot the scientists. There's guys on the right, guys on the left, and there's turrets, and then down that staircase there's more guys too, and because it's a staircase they can shoot through it, and they can hit you in this doorway when you can't even see them. So there's all kinds of opportunity here for shenanigans. And you'll notice I'm being quite defensive. I don't play defensive in this game, guys, but this level is annoying. So sometimes you just kind of have to. And I was hoping they would push, but they didn't. And what will happen here is when I shoot the turrets, when I shoot this turret, I think someone's going to hear it. So I shoot that, and then I back up. And then, boom, someone starts shooting. You can see the impact. And all we do is we wait for them. And when we go in this room, there's going to be the 2 guys on the right near the lockers and the 1 guy on the left who breaks the lockers. That happens consistently. And sometimes it's just easier to let them come to you, but I don't like doing it because it's boring. But 2 guys here, then the locker gets shot. That guy usually breaks it, this time he didn't. Down here there's 2 more guys, and then you just have to kill the console. None of this should be a problem, you know, with how capable we are being Bond. But it's a problem because you never know if you're going to get hit coming up at the end, so you're nervous about it. And right here, the only thing left to do is to go down and start setting up for the end game. So you open this door, and there's, like, is it two soldiers just in here? There goes the 2 soldiers. We've got plenty of ammo. And then to our right, or to our left now, this doorway opens, and there's another one of those doors because there's 2 guys in here, so kill them. And then this is where you'll get cheesed on the door by the guns if you don't know. So 2 more openings here. And you have to shoot Trevelyan. So I'm going to open this door and back up, and I don't shoot him. And what happens is, I'm playing for the trap. But the trap doesn't happen unless he does the dialogue. So I come back on myself to get to a stronger position, but the enemies aren't here. So it doesn't actually work. So note to self, guys. Shoot Trevelyan as you back away, or they won't be there. And you can see that I'm waiting on it, even though it's not here yet. And I hate doing a level and then getting hit by bullshit right at the end. It's so frustrating. And you can have that happen to you a lot on this game if you get unlucky. But there's the shot on Trevelyan. Watch out for his reprisal. And then here, these guys turn up. And then there's another guy behind me right there. I got very lucky just then. Again, if this was Cradle AI or Aztec, you're dead. But here, you're fine. And then there's more guys running through the tunnel here, but they're far away. So they're spraying. And usually the rule of thumb is distance. Distance is safety in this game. Distance plus movement equals safety. But these guys aren't that aggressive, so it takes them a long time to come, and I'm checking that door just in case. But it's just unfortunate. If those 2 turrets didn't exist in that corridor, you could just bomb rush the corridor and you'd be fine. There's only about 3 guys blocking the elevator, and then you've won. But there's those fellas, and now we just need to... Again, because I've been shot right at the end when I thought I'd cleared it, but I didn't, I'm taking my time, I'm making sure there's no cheesy bastards just lingering, and then we see these fellas with the shotgun. The shotgun guys. So now I've done those, I'm going to go and start attacking the turrets. But I'm still... And I'm going to shut the door too, so if they do come that way, I'll hear them. Which is one of the good things about Goldeneye, you can use the sounds to your advantage, but 2 turrets here. And then boom, the door started opening. Do you hear it? Don't know why though. And then I shut it and I keep moving. Now, all I need to do is kill the last few stragglers, and this room is actually quite peaceful compared to what it is sometimes. Again, it's one of those weird spawns, I think. But you open up, and I'm used to there being 3 enemies in here. But I can't see anyone. And there's him. And then there's him. And that's it. hit the door and you've won. And I even double checked the objectives because I don't want to play this again because it was really annoying me. And there you go, Water Caverns is conquered. And now we move into probably the worst level in the game for no damage. And it's funny too, because when I think of Cradle, I think Legendary. One of the greatest levels in a game ever. I did not realise just how bad it was until I came back to it. And the start is the worst part, believe it or not. The very beginning, there's a soldier that's so cranked, he shoots you before you even see him. And I'm going to shoot him before you even see him. And I'm just going to keep shooting up there. And what you'll see is Trevelyan draws in, and then the soldier draws in. That guy is going to hit you more than anyone in the game. He must have shot me 20 times. And right from this moment moving forward, this level is random. And what's happening is Trevelyan's going to run around. We need to shoot him so that he starts saying his dialogue. He then runs away, stands still, and you shoot him and he does more dialogue. If you do that 4 or 5 times, it runs to the end and you can kill him. The problem is, as this is happening, enemies constantly spawn randomly. Where you are dictates where they are. So if you're up at the top, they're going to come on the bottom and the top and move up towards you. If you're in the middle, they're going to spawn around you and move towards you. If you're on the bottom, they're going to try and cut you off. So my advice is never go down on the bottom until the end. And the strategy I came up with is I destroy the turrets, destroy the machine, I come here, and then I wait for the spawns to get to me. And when they get to me, I kill them on the door, right? There's one. These enemies are so cranked, I can't even convince you how hard these guys are. They play like a human, dude. They're just mean. So now that these guys have died, I'm going to move in here. There's Trevelyan, I shot him. He talked. He's now going to walk down here. I'm going to shoot him again. He talks again. And then I'm going to wait just like I just did. And you see the guy spawning up there? He's coming down. We're waiting for either doors to move or people to populate on walkways so that we can kill them. Boom, doorway, shoot him. There's going to be 2 more. And then there's 2 more spawning. So I kill those guys. That door just opened. There's Trevelyan. We shoot him in the back. I'm going to shut that door as I come through. Shoot him again. And then he goes, oh, I'm still the best, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if shooting Trevelyan in the head makes this go faster. Because this is pretty fast for Cradle, but it's not as fast as I've seen someone else do it, and I think the only difference is they shot him in the head. So if you can, guys, shoot him in the head, this will go quicker. But just be careful, because it's so random. And as soon as the music changes, and he goes like, oh, come and get me or whatever, that's when we go down. And when we go down, if you avoid being down this whole time, there will be no one down there to cut you off, unless you get really unlucky. And this is all about luck. This whole level is just bullshit RNG. And I'm so happy it took me 20 minutes, but that 20 minutes was the most aggravating 20 minutes of the game. So right here, you'll never win, James, and when he goes down, I shut the door, I'm going to shoot him now. Boom, finish the job. This is the fight. Right here is where you're going to get fucked if you do. So there's no one down here, and as soon as you get here, you drop down, turn around, shoot him, you've won. This looks so easy, it is not. This level is awful. It does not feel like you're in control, and that's what makes it so scary. But there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, 20 plus years later, Chris finally goes back and beats Goldeneye on 00 Agent. And what a feeling it was. What a masterpiece this game is. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Especially on the emulator, especially with mouse and keyboard, if that's your thing. Phenomenal game, phenomenal legacy, back when Rare were essential and just masters of their trade. Thank you so much for watching, and you take care now.